Good morning. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristin Snowden, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. And this is a free webinar where I focus on helping you navigate extreme relational crises. And these are crises that are usually brought on when we uncover infidelity, betrayal, substance abuse. Maybe we're starting to put together pieces of emotional abuse, manipulation that's happening in our relational system. And today's webinar is going to be focusing how to help you assess the gravity of the relationship and your partner's betraying behaviors in the relationship. So essentially, we're going to help you assess, is this just a betrayal, an infidelity, an affair? Or is this more a part of a deeper, more chronic sex porn love addiction issue that's going to require several more layers of support? And then we're going to talk about what are the right levels of treatment and support that are going to be necessary once you've kind of assessed what's going on here. So many of you who are watching have uncovered devastating secrets that your partner has been keeping, maybe affairs that have been going on and off throughout your relationship, pornography use that you maybe didn't realize the severity or frequency, financial transactions that you were unaware of, substance use that was tied in. And this can also come and often comes hand in hand with weeks and months of years of your partner lying, gaslighting, manipulating, minimizing the behavior, rationalizing the behavior, or even blame shifting it and pushing it onto you, making you feel like this is part of a marital problem, rather than just focusing that he or she has his own decisions, he or she has choices, and he or she decided to go out and lie and sneak around and engage in these behaviors. So many of you who are here are trying to get education, trying to figure out, where do I go from here? And you're asking yourself, is this problem that I've uncovered, that I find myself in, is this truly a marital issue? Is this a couple's issue? I mean, he or she is my partner. Or is this betrayal, these behaviors, um, part of a more chronic, bigger issue like a sex, love, and porn addiction? Is this just a dark season in my partner's life? Or is this a broader kind of personality issue that's woven into his or her character, how he or she deals with life? And these are all really important questions to ask, because if the answer is that it's more of a patterned, deeper addiction issue, you're going to require a lot more structure and accountability and support during the healing process. So we're going to cover three topics in this webinar. We're going to first explore, was this betrayal a single, isolated, dark season in your marital story? That's absolutely possible. Or is this more a chronic, deeper pattern that's aligned with addict behavior? The second thing we're going to discuss is, depending on how you answer that first question, there's going to be different treatment options and plans and approaches to healing and repair after this crisis has been uncovered. And the third thing we're going to talk about is signs that your partner might be moving away from his or her unhealthy acting out behaviors, the affair, the infidelity, the kind of stunted emotional capacity to deal with hard things, moving away from those unhealthy behaviors and into more of a recovery, healthy, open, transparent type of behavior. So let me be very clear that not every incident of cheating, every time that there's an affair, that doesn't instantly mean that your partner is an addict. And in fact, there's many addicts who aren't cheating on because maybe they're not in a partnership, they're not committed to anybody, and they're just engaging in these really chronic, harmful behaviors. So I want you to understand the difference between those two. Not everyone who maybe views pornography is an addict, but that's similar in that, like, not everyone who drinks alcohol is an alcoholic. So you really have to have professionals or assessments or those who know how to screen and ask the right questions. Find out, how is this behavior showing up in your partner's life? When and where and how and what frequency and intensity level is your partner using these unhealthy coping skills? And most importantly, how is it working for him or her? And how is it working for you? How is this behavior that your partner's engaging in affecting you? And as we know on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, there is a plethora of online assessment tools, screening tools that you can go to find out, does my partner have a pornography issue, substance abuse issues, etc. So that's all, free and accessible to you. Let me clarify also, the very basic thing when we're assessing, oh, can I do this behavior? Can I view this pornography? What about having multiple casual sex partners if I'm not married? And, I am not the value and rules police. So I just always ask clients when they're talking about what works in their marriage, what doesn't work in their personal life, I always want them to ask two big questions, two follow-up questions. So can I do this? Can I not do this? Is this healthy? Is not this not healthy? The first question is, do you have to lie, sneak around, manipulate others, or harm yourself or others in order to make this behavior happen? And then the second question is this behavior that you want to do, that you want to engage in, or even this person that you want to keep engaging with, is this behavior in line with your values and goals? Is this a representation, this behavior, and who you are when you're engaging in this behavior, aligned with who you want to be, how you want to show up for others, and if you're in a relationship, what you want your relationship to look like? So those two follow-up questions can really help someone figure out, is this a good choice or is this a bad choice? Because let's be honest, so many of us are guilty of doing unhealthy behaviors, or just unhealthy coping skills. Some of us drink, some of us do view pornography, some scroll social media, like we're ghosts, kind of just viewing an empty screen, or do that with TV shows. We can make unhealthy food or lifestyle choices. We can work too much. We can be perfectionists. We can be rageaholics, shop or gamble too much. Humans have default settings where they naturally want to run away from or numb or dissociate from uncomfortable or painful feelings and move towards something that's just distracting, or something that's more pleasurable, or something that's just more simple-minded, so we naturally do all these things. But there's a spectrum here. There's always a spectrum of people who kind of do things unhealthy. They notice it gets too extreme. They kind of move back to healthy. They can self-correct. They take feedback from other people when they're like, hey, you're not really paying attention. You're kind of checking out. That rage is getting a little out of control. They have this kind of internal ability to recheck themselves, reorient, and move forward to a healthier way of life. I'm gaining too much weight. I need to change my eating habits, work out more. There's a self-correction there. But addiction is more on the extreme side, where it is done to this level of insanity, where they can get all the feedback in the world that things aren't working for them. They can be arrested. They can be, given the ultimatums by their partner that if you don't change this or stop this, I'm leaving. And there's just this lack of being able to take external feedback and internal feedback that this is hurting me. This is not who I am. This is not how I want to show up in life. And they struggle to self-correct. And so that's the more extreme. And that's what we're going to talk about here, and give you some options if that's what you're seeing. Now, a few notes before I dive in is, as with all therapy, treatment, diagnoses, requirements, I always say everything works until it doesn't. So one of the first things that are required when you're defining somebody with a diagnosable problem, like you're an addict or you're a narcissist or whatever the terms are that we use so often, is there has to be a problem. It has to not be working. It might be causing relational issues. It might be causing financial or work issues. The person might be getting arrested or in trouble at work because of inappropriate boundaries. but it has to be creating some problems, physical problems. They're drinking and they're having liver or physical consequences to it. There's got to be problems. So the number one requirement is there's got to be a problem. Another thing I want you to know is that when faced with issues around infidelity, porn use, behaviors of sneaking around, manipulation, just this kind of high level of ability to hide a whole other second life, kind of come home and lie to your face. If you're seeing that in your betrayed partner, a high level of like, wow, I didn't realize you were lying so much and so often about so many things in so many harmful ways, I'm always going to encourage you to find a professional. Remember, you didn't get a manual in how to handle the fact that your partner, you uncovered that your partner is an addict and has been lying for a lot of your marriage. So the second best thing you can do to that is engage a professional who has essentially read that manual and has worked with thousands of clients that are very similar to your partner, your addict partner, and really have them assess, ask the right questions, kind of read through the lies that will most likely be put in front of him or her, the minimization, and they kind of have the BS monitor to help you move through that really confusing process of figuring out, how bad is this issue that we're talking about right now? How bad is my partner? Is this fixable? And then the third thing that I want to note before diving in is all forms of betrayal, cheating, affairs, uncovering your partner's porn use, etc. Any behavior where you did not know that your partner was out there doing it, maybe you just didn't even know your partner was capable of doing this behavior, that they had it in their character or ability to lie to your face and do these types of things. It doesn't matter where it is on the spectrum. Is it just a single affair or chronic addiction? It is all devastating. But there is definitely a treatment difference that you would take if you found out, like I said at the beginning, that it's just kind of something that is not self-correcting. There's not an internal compass that is causing the lying, sneaking around partner to change his or her behavior. Because if it is a single infidelity, sometimes people can kind of, well, let me start with this, that the problem is that when it goes undiagnosed, the addiction issue, people can waste years of their life going to couples therapy, making it look like it is a marital issue when it just isn't. I mean, it's like, how do you even know if someone is engaged in the coupleship if they have this whole other secret life going on and they're lying and manipulating, and they don't even have the emotional tolerance to talk about hard things and make adjustments, etc. So you want to be careful of that. And then the second part is yes, if it is just a single infidelity and it's a symbol of a dark season in someone's life where a multitude of things added up and caused someone to move outside their value system for some reason, it does happen, then you can often move into couples therapy and kind of better understand and use the couples environment to break down what happened and the breakdown in trust and communication and stuff again. So I'm just going to say that. So let's dive into, is it cheating or addiction? So let's first talk about cheating in general. You can do an entire webinar on that. I can talk about why cheating happens, why infidelity happens. It's only just based on my 15, 16 years of doing this. I'll offer you some books and some authors that I think talk about it in a fair way, in a reasonable way. But cheating can come in any form. And let's just generally define it as, cheating is any time you go outside the marital or relational commitment and bond to get your very personal, intimate, and emotional needs met. And yes, it's very general for a reason, ladies and gentlemen, because your partner can feel betrayed anytime. It's essentially, you're cheating anytime you are doing a behavior outside your relationship in secret and behind your partner's back, knowing that if he or she found out, they would definitely feel hurt, angry, betrayed, and definitely question your commitment to your partnership with them and your commitment to making them a priority and your relationship a priority. So, how each betrayed partner defines that, it depends. It's a feeling, it's an experience. I don't get to define that for them, but we can experience cheating in many, many different forms. So, I don't want to put it in a box. And as I always tell people, it doesn't always mean one sexual organ goes into another sexual organ. That does not define cheating for many, many people. People can feel very unsafe on many different levels for many different reasons. So, per the general social survey that they did on infidelity in the US, they found 20 to 25% of married men and 10 to 15% of married women in the US reported cheating on their spouse at some point. But there was a much, much higher percentage of married people who were reporting having emotional affairs, right? So on those text messages, that work friend or other person, that they definitely had a higher level of emotional intimacy connection, where there was an emotional affair that went on. Something that was interesting is they found that original surveys showed that men often cheated more than the women, but they're now reporting that that gender gap is narrowing. And especially in the younger generations, almost as many women are reporting cheating as men are. So I thought that was interesting. And again, I'm not going to go deep into why cheating happens in a marriage. Sometimes in the span of 20 years, bad stuff can happen. It's very possible and very common. But some books that I think that you can explore to kind of understand, why does this happen? What are the reasons behind it? How do I move forward from this? Are John Gottman's book, What Makes Love Last, Terrence Real's book, The New Rules of Marriage. Esther Perel wrote a book on the state of affairs, where she kind of talks about the differences culturally, what we think of as marriage and commitment and intimacy, etc. So those are things to check out if you want to understand why cheating happens. Does infidelity happen? I also have a few other webinars on this topic, and I'll link them in the description to kind of, if you want to explore this further. But really, this webinar is meant to help you say, okay, I already know my partner cheated. I already know that I need to find out why this happened, how it happened, etc. But I need to know, are we talking about a higher level of cheating where there's just a chronic pattern, and am I going to need a bigger boat? Do we need more help here? Because with single instances of infidelity, they can, like I said, work it out in a couple settings sometimes, as long as there's a willingness from the cheating partner to be honest, to be accountable, to own what they did, to kind of say, at some point in this time in my life, for whatever reason, I've done the work to figure it out. I had choices, and I chose to go outside my marriage, go against my value system, against my marital commitments, and go act out in a way that I knew would hurt my partner. And then I continued to cover it up with secrets and lying, etc. That all needs to be unraveled if it's an infidelity situation. However, if it's more of also an addiction issue, that needs to happen in addition to several more things. So here are some signs that your partner may be dealing with a greater issue that is more aligned with sex, love, pornography addiction. So let's explore, what's the difference between a normie and an addict here when it comes to unhealthy behaviors and coping skills. As I mentioned, we can all do things to a level of insanity at times, but in addicts, it's much more deep-rooted and chronic, and keeps that person stuck in the same unhealthy, deeply damaging patterns while they are hurting themselves and hurting others during this whole process. Now, I can't tell you exactly the behavior and at what rate and frequency, and if this happens this many times or if they have this many affairs, because every sex, love, porn addict acts out differently, just as those who abuse substances They'll drink at different seasons of their life. They'll use different substances, but you can look over the span of 10, 15, 20 years and kind of just see this chronic pattern of like a low tolerance for dealing with uncomfortable emotions, an inability to share and connect. And instead of leaning into other humans to work through happiness, sadness, struggle, growth, I lean into my substance of choice or my sexual acting out behaviors, love, pornography, addiction behaviors. So I talked about this last week, but let's educate really fast on how the DSM Diagnostic Statistical Manual defines addiction. So addiction requires the majority of the following symptoms to be present per the DSM. You need to be taking or doing the behavior more. So increasing the frequency, the intensity, the time spent on the computer, the amount of affairs or sexual acting out behaviors slowly over time. The frequency increases, larger amounts, more often, more intense, more risk taking, etc. There has to have been an attempt to stop, whether it was an internal, oh, I swear I'm not going to do hard drugs anymore. Okay, no more prostitutes. Okay, that was my last affair at work. There's been like internal or verbal commitments to your loved ones that they will stop the behavior, and then an inability to actually stop. Next is it has to create social problems. It has to create issues in the relationship. Has to create issues in workplace or their personal life. Often it's because they do more of this behavior and obsessing and fantasizing around this behavior and substance use that they don't even have a social life anymore. They don't engage anymore. Risky use, that goes back to the needing more. Usually the progress of it is you need to seek higher intensity, maybe start breaking laws, doing things in a more unsafe, unhealthy way in order to get that high. You continue to do it despite physical, legal, or emotional consequences. And then lost time. You're spending so much time on this behavior, on the drinking, and then recovering from the hangover, or spending a bunch of money on drugs, and then you're trying to make up the money that you lost, or the gambling, or acting out and then hiding it and then feeling really bad about it, but then obsessing about when you get to do it again. That it's just huge chunks of lost time. Time where you're not present, time where you're not building memories, time where you don't have engagement in meaningful relationships, time where you're just not present. And I always think of Rob Weiss when he was, educating me on sex, love, and porn addiction. And he would always just say, every addict has an intimacy disorder. So, because essentially, instead of going with our natural organic wiring to use human relationships to help regulate and co-regulate our life experiences. So when it's a birthday and we want to be excited and celebrate, we go to people to celebrate. When it's when it's something hard, when we've lost a loved one or something bad has happened, we want to go to people for love and support and affirmation. But addicts don't have that natural response in them. Those feelings and the engaging in vulnerable, intimate connections with others is too much for them and their nervous system. So instead, they go to this controlled coping skill of, that bottle of Jack Daniels, that prescription drug medication, finding the right prostitute or acting out in this certain way, or, I celebrate an achievement by doing this, acting out, going to massage parlors or etc. Like these are all, instead of leaning into the beautiful and brutal, messy, but fulfilling world of human connection to get through life, they kind of try to circumnavigate that and go, no, I'm going to kind of have this facade connection with other humans, but have this really deep, intense, obsessive, compulsive connection with my acting out behavior of choice, which, by the way, that can change over time. There's a lot of people, as we know, in these rooms starts with alcohol issues or substance abuse issues, then transfers into chronic affairs. So they can kind of grab at everything to just not feel, not connect, not be present. That's what's going on here. So every addict is capable of that. Now, let me tell you what I tend to see in general as examples of sex, love, and porn addiction. So one of the most common things I see are I'm now grappling with finding out about my partner's third affair in our 18-year marriage. I'm starting to feel like something is bigger than just like the first time it was just we dealt with it like it was a cheating issue. We went to couples therapy and it's still happening. That's a huge red flag for me that we might be dealing with addiction here. So multiple instances of affairs with paid or unpaid participants over the years, or a long history of inappropriate boundaries with other people. You're finding text messages that from coworkers or acquaintances that don't make sense, and they always have some story about it. Inappropriate connections with people at work or people in the community that just make you feel uneasy. Like it's just, there's always this like, why don't you know that this isn't okay? Like you're just not appropriate. As I mentioned before, consistent fusing of alcohol and drug use with sexual acting out type of behaviors. Patterned acting out. So patterns of acting out, like a lot of my betrayed partners will tell me they uncovered that every time their partner was going out on a business trip, that's when he or she would act out. So there's a terrible saying that one of my colleague or a client told me. There was this idea of wheels up, rings off. And that was the culture that we're on a work trip. I can go out and do these types of behaviors. That is part of a chronic obsessive compulsive pattern that is different than just like run-of-the-mill affairs. Obsessive scanning of pornography sites or sexually charged social media, dating apps, online sites. Multiple or anonymous sexual partners, online or work affairs, one-night stands, continuous, unsafe, dangerous, or illegal sexual encounters, exhibitionism, voyeurism, stalking, compulsive masturbation despite it causing harm, sexual harassment, so a history of sexual harassment, inappropriate boundary violation, inappropriate flirting, saying things that make other people feel uncomfortable, advances to those who are in vulnerable positions, and a history of chronic, highly toxic, dangerous, or abusive relationships. So getting in and out of that. Now, one might be asking, how can sex, love, porn addiction get unwired? Because we use this disease model that addiction is a part of a disease. It's been wired into the addict's system. Sex addiction is categorized under impulse control disorders or process addictions. And remember, process addiction is a blanket term used to describe any obsessive or compulsive behavior that a person continues to engage in despite a desire to stop or negative consequences. And not only is it about the engagement of the behavior, so let's say the sexual act in and of itself, but it often accompanies rituals. And these rituals, the fantasizing, the obsessing about it before and after, those chemicals that are released are what create some of the highs and some of the withdrawal states. Whereas there's chemical addictions and you actually like ingest the chemicals to alter your state, but doing these behaviors and figuring out when you're going to carve out the time to do the behavior, how you're going to do it, how you're going to cover it up, how you feel really bad about what you did. And now you're not going to do it. You swear to God. And then all of a sudden you see another opportunity to act out and do this behavior again. This is all a part of the addiction cycle. So it's not just about uncovering this happened. This person's been cheating, multiple affairs, or they got caught at work or something. It doesn't work to just go, okay, stop. This is bad. This is harmful. I'm trying to tell you, it's deeply wired into their nervous system, into their lifestyle and pattern of coping in life. And so There are real chemicals and biological changes that occur in the brain from someone who is struggling with a process addiction. And their reward center in their brain is stimulated. So you have to really start picking apart and understanding the patterns of how it happened, why it happened, when it started happening, how it progressed, why it progressed, what triggers it, what calms it. It kind of always goes to, it becomes a more isolating life where they pull farther and farther away from the world and more into their fantasy acting out world. And so obviously the antidote to that is to bring them back into the real world where they're talking about it, being honest about it, rewiring their default settings of wanting to do this behavior and replacing it with something healthier. So, as I mentioned, a lot of time, if this is an addiction, it's much more than talking this stuff out in couples counseling, much more. There is a lot of time and lifestyle changes and behavior and choice changes and structure and alignment and accountability that the addict must go through in order to rewire his or her brain. They have to redefine and rebuild healthy relationships and also develop the tolerance in their body to cope with the vulnerability of that, the discomfort of that. They have to be engaging vulnerably, honestly with real humans in a substantive way, not like, oh, this is my acting out partner, or this is a person on TV that I'm watching and objectifying in order to change my internal state. Or this is the alcohol I use to numb out from engaging with everybody. So that takes a lot of work in rewiring. So that is often why we encourage clients to be going to therapy to figure this stuff out, doing group work, because it's the opposite of an intimacy disorder, right? When you are engaging and connecting with others, you're changing that wiring that you can be honest with people. There are people out there who can understand your struggles. So these are the things that we tend to, well, let me say this, let me skip around. So just one last point before I move into how do you treat these kind of addictions is sex, love, and porn addiction does not always, by the way, mean that there's a sexual abuse history in their background. That's another big myth that I hear. It doesn't instantly mean if I have sexual acting out tendencies, it doesn't mean that it stems from sexual abuse. It can, it does sometimes, but it doesn't always. And also someone who might be exploring their like gender identity or fetishes or honest, open, consensual, transparent sexual activities. If those are done openly, consensually, honestly, in line with their values, they don't lie and have to sneak around, then that's not usually an addiction issue. So I just wanted to caveat that. So let me close out with a few more points. What do you do if you or a loved one is struggling with sex, love, porn addiction issues? So first things first, you're a betrayed partner, you're listening to this and it's scaring the hell out of you. Well, you're in the right place because this is the land of free resources, experts. Tammy is here. You have her email. She answers phone calls. She knows everything and can help you with everything. Thank God for these resources. So you do not have to go through this alone. So like I said, you didn't get the manual on how to handle this, but thank God within just a phone call or an email, there's a bunch of people who deal with this all day, every day, and they can answer your questions, give you treatment options, and tell you healthy next steps. I would also encourage you to keep listening to all of these podcasts and webinars. The more you educate yourself and the more you can learn what is gaslighting? Why does an addict use manipulation and lying and minimization? How do I create boundaries around this? How do I, what are reasonable consequences if I find out my partner relapses again or I catch him or her lying again? These are all really important questions that you're not going to naturally automatically know the answer to. So please keep listening to these podcasts and webinars and go to these online communities, sexandrelationshiphealing.com, We Tong Lin. There's lots of other resources out there. Get yourself in a betrayed partner support group. This will be, if your partner, if this is not just a run-of-the-mill infidelity issue, the road to recovery will be a lot more protracted, longer, and will not be a linear path. You will move 5 steps forward, 3 steps back. It will look more like a roller coaster rather than, a path up a hill. So you're going to need help and support, a place to do reality checks, a place to share resources, to break down, to share your disappointments, your fears. And the best place to go is a group of people who have suffered and struggled in a similar way. So they get it, they understand, they hopefully will not be judging you, and you'll feel like there's a place you can finally be honest about what's going on. All right. And so what if you're the addict? So most addicts believe that their struggles are unique. They keep secrets and live with the deep shame and compartmentalize the whole time. Therefore, it's imperative that they engage a recovery community with peers who have struggled in similar ways. They need to share their stories, listen to others' stories, and figure out how they got recovery, and then figure out how to go to there. There's sponsors, there's friends, there's fellowshipping. They need to create healthy, well-boundaried, vulnerable connections with people in their recovery community. They need to stay structured and committed to their recovery process. And the partner, the betrayed partner, should not be the babysitter of them. Their recovery community should be helping them along the way, keeping them going. And of course, we always recommend 12-step recovery groups. There's SAA for the partners. There's like an Al-Anon, S-Anon. There's ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. There's Pro Dependence Anonymous for the partners. There's SLAW, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, SPA, Sex and Porn Addicts Anonymous. There's a lot. But they need assistance and accountability in defining what their sobriety is going to look like, and then keep them on that path. It's a place where they can build up empathy for those that they've harmed, the harm they've caused themselves also, accountability for the choices that they've made, and a commitment to their support system to make different choices, seek help before acting out on their impulse and their default wiring, and make the next right choice. And again, it stops, these 12-step meetings also stop the betrayed partners from having to be the babysitters of them. And couples therapy can be good once the acting out partner, the addict partner, has developed some level of empathy, hopefully in their 12-step meetings, some growth, some recovery, and some sobriety. Then they can start talking about rebuilding trust, helping their betrayed partner heal from what's happened. And then last few minutes is, let me just give you a few signs that your addict partner is changing for the better. So we are in treatment, we're recovering. How do we know that our partner is getting better? So there's a level of humbleness and surrender to what they've done and what they're capable of doing. So there's this appreciation that me in my default setting is capable of being quite harmful. So I better keep going to the meetings, better keep asking questions, better remain humbled. And like I said, they're open to that feedback loop system from their partners, from others, to tell them that, hey, you've been a little snippety today, or, you're isolating more, you need to get back on track. And they go, oh, okay, thank you. Willingness to live in consultation with others. They need to realize that their best thinking got them here in the first place, and they have to run things through their sponsor, their recovery community, their properly trained therapist, etc. Because they miss it. They have a broken filter decision-making reward system that needs to be having someone else check and balance them. Terrible English, terrible grammar. Connected to feelings. They understand why they've done what they've done, the feelings that they're feeling. If they speak contradictorily, there's an appreciation that part of them feels this way, but another part of them feels this way. So what I'm trying to say is they can hold space for, like, I can be really angry, but I also feel this way. I love my partner, but this is really frustrating what's happening in our relationship right now. So they kind of understand the multi-capacity for lots of different feelings. There's the absence of blame shifting and gaslighting. So they can hold, there's a comfort and complexity with holding space for multiple truths. Um, so you can be mad at me for what I did, but I'm currently doing my best. And there's this understanding like I can hold space for you being upset at me, but I am doing my best. There are boundaries. They like themselves enough that they actually feel like they have the right to hold boundaries, even if it upsets you. Um, and they can actually communicate it in a healthy, functional way. There's a lack of duplicity. So you say what you mean and mean what you say, and you follow through. Um, the addict, it's a good sign if they're not just operating out of duty and obligation. Sometimes people have to initially, but it's good when you actually see it out of they're operating and making choices because they want to, because they're doing it for them, because it's aligned with their values and goals, and they want to do these kind of things for their partner, and for their own self-esteem. Shame resiliency skills. They can hold space for the crappy things that they've done in life and the harm they've caused, but actually start liking the new person that they've become and acknowledge the hard work they've done to get to this place in space. Another good sign is if they can hold space for the betrayed partner's anger and hurt. That's a huge sign. If they can sit there while the person's upset at them and expressing it and say, don't you understand how I experienced this, how upsetting this was? And they can practice true empathy and compassion. And finally, we look for the addict to have a authentic, vulnerable, honest connection with people. And I underline that it's people that are, if you have a sex, love, pornography issue, that they are not in your attraction template. So they are people, if you're a heterosexual male, that you have honest, vulnerable, healthily intimate connections with other men, which is rare until they're in recovery. And that is it. I'm ready to answer questions.
And we have questions. I've got a couple of comments, but I'm going to hold them and make sure we get through the questions since we have a time thing. So what role, if any, does neurodiversity play a role in infidelity? In, for example, impulsivity and RSD with decades-long untreated ADHD and hypersexuality with stimulant abuse and alcoholism?
So I'm not an expert in the neurodiversity world, but I do know there's a lot of overlap in things like ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and addiction and sexual acting out behaviors. So I don't want to speak as if I'm an expert in that, but what I just see is all of those things generally are a filter reward system disorder. So meaning the average person will look through something and they'll say, oh, I really want to eat that chocolate cake, but then it's going to give me a stomach ache. And also, I've been carrying an extra 10 pounds and I'm really trying to watch my A1C and my cholesterol. So I put it through a filter, a broader, bigger picture of like, is this a good choice based on a number of things? Who I am, what my goals are, you can call it whatever, delaying gratification, I don't know. But the people with the ADHD, the OCD, the neurodivergence, there seems to not be the gamut of decision-making filter tree options that they run choices through. So maybe they don't have that social filter that they're running it through. Maybe they don't have that in the multitude of internal filters that they're running it through. And it also takes a lot of time, brain power, so therefore attention, to put it through that prefrontal cortex of like higher level functioning to come to the right conclusion. So you often see those people, the people that you're seeing, the RSD, ADHD, do these really unhealthy choices. And like you look at them and go, really? That's your best thinking? Like that's what you thought was a good response or a good choice? Or didn't you think about how this was going to make me feel, or how it was going to impact me or the children or the family or the finances? And the quick answer to that is no, they didn't think about it. Sometimes because they don't want to, and sometimes it's because they never have the process to slow it down talk it out, which is why, again, we need the 12-step type world where you need to talk it out, engage. Does this make sense? Does it not make sense? My partner responded this way. Is that normal? Because they have to talk it out and really develop this like prefrontal cortex, higher functioning thinking where we slow it down and make the next right choice.
And we have a number of clients who have had, those factors. And that does, I want to tag on here and go, there's hope. Like they can learn to do things differently. Approaches may need to be modified, but that does not mean that, oh, well, we just have to accept that this is how they are because they have this. No, it's like, okay, with these challenges or this level of challenge, and now here's the pathway that can be useful for, those clients. So like I said, our residential treatment team, and I do think, for those that, if there's a certain level of things, residential treatment to really address holistically all aspects of that, to have have the time, like Kristin was saying, to have it be able to slow down and really, get a plan and get the support that is needed, can be most helpful. So, and, you just talked about, men working with men. I posted, we have a sex addiction 101 work group that starts on Saturday. It's guys, and it's led by a male who is going to teach this. It is live facilitated. It's not just reading a book or, watching something. So there's an opportunity to connect and to do peer accountability for those that wish it and, have a solid plan. So check that out. I put the link in there. Can you touch on how an addict going through an identity crisis as he starts his addiction recovery, he now doesn't trust anything he thinks and wonders if he really wants to be in our relationship to the resentments he's held for years that he hasn't brought forward until after his SA and PA were discovered, which feels very addict brain thinking to me. I've given him the space he has requested, but I am feeling a bit helpless. I'm part of a betrayed partner groups and have a CSAT as well as parts therapist to work through my healing and trauma. I would love your take on things.
I think all recovery is an identity crisis because the entire brain structure of how we saw the world and coped with the world and decided how to move forward in the world we're learning was very harmful. Or just definitely was not cutting the mustard, like it wasn't working. So when you go through recovery in the 12-step process, it will make you question everything. It's not the first time that I hear that someone in recovery starts questioning, oh, do I want to stay in my relationship or not? I think most sponsors will encourage people to not make any big decisions. I know that the saying usually is don't make any big decisions until a year post sobriety, because who knows who you're going to be and what is going to be your life a year of doing this hard work, engaging with these recovery people, relearning how to cope with life, how to deal with life, reassessing what your values and your goals are, repairing the harm that was caused to yourself, to others, to your family, etc. You just don't know where you're going to be when everything settles a year, 2 years later. So I understand why watching your partner change so drastically is scary for you, especially if he's verbalizing a desire to leave or feeling like there's resentments that he's just not going to get through. I usually experts and support systems will say, okay, it's good that you're having these feelings, do verbalize them, but let's practice to hang in there and not do anything impulsively, right? The goal, like anything that's happened lately, is because you didn't think through, process through, sit with uncomfortable emotions, talk them through. And so now we're going to do the opposite of that. You think that today, let's keep talking about it, and then let's see where it goes. Yami?
Just he doesn't trust anything he thinks. I can so relate to that. That's why I didn't mean to giggle. I'm not taking any of it, but I was like, I can relate to that. And it's complex. I'm in a relationship and I don't even know who I am. So how can I know if I'm like, I get all of that. So I love what Kristin was saying, is slow everything down. I was thinking Kristin did a great webinar, and I talk about this one all the time in May. Should I stay or should I go? and I love taking the 10 questions that she suggested and journaling about it. And both of you do that, and then take that to your therapist and talk about it. And it can also be like, in this moment, this is where I'm at, but I also can see, but having this is what I feel like is this is ping ponging in your addict's brain going, should I stay? Should I go? Should I stay? Should I go? I don't even know who I am. Like, and that's frightening for the addict and for you as well. So I love that you're getting support for you. But check out that webinar from May. I find that one super helpful. And hopefully your addicts doing the work that they need to do so that they really are on a solid path, and things really do change over time.
Yeah.
As they're willing to do the emotional work. So.
And there almost is always resentment. Like there's
Oh, of
always
course.
a
That's
underlying
what the fourth
resentment.
step is about. Yeah.
And so I actually love that he's connecting with it. And like, yeah, like roll up your sleeves. Let's talk about the resentments. That's like tough work right there. And see, but you couldn't do anything. You couldn't heal anything or work through or recover anything if he wasn't connecting with what his resentments were. Now you actually have some substance to work with, to talk about, to kind of sort through. So,
Okay, next question. Last night we had a couples counseling appointment. I was so very raw and vulnerable as the counselor asked me to be. Afterwards, my husband said, I'm going upstairs to read. What is that all about? He is so disconnected about his emotions, and he has absolutely no space for holding mine. I told him I am leaving him after almost 41 years of marriage, 2.5 years after D-Day. He has been lying about his recovery, and it took polygraphs for him to get sober. He is not living in recovery. Thoughts?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I can understand how his responses are baffling, right? Because you probably feel so much. Probably every day you are probably just trying to figure out, where do I stuff all this hurt, all these questions, all this grief, all this loss, all this pain. I'm literally, I feel like I'm bleeding out every day. And I have to stuff this all in just so I can function, so I can get dressed, eat, move forward, take care of family, etc. Whereas my partner can just be like, "Oh, that was a really long couple session. I'm going to go read now and, go paint little soldier action figures." Um, they put it somewhere, that ability to not, experience everything, and for him to not struggle watching you struggle, to kind of take lots of really complicated, difficult things and just shove them away and not have responses and not use the pain of what's going on to shape you and change your behaviors. Yeah, that's deeply concerning. And those are definitely not signs of being in recovery or motivated to be in recovery. So, I'm sorry about the fact that you feel like you're having to tell him that you're going to leave and end 41 years of marriage. But it sounds like you also kind of have a lot of reasons why.
So I just posted the webinar, and I wrote a blog this morning about Kristin did the one in May. We had two partners in May. One shared why I stayed, one shared I left and why. Deborah Doak did a mediation, and then yesterday Stuart Leviton, who's an attorney and also a mental health professional, did the legal aspect. So we have a series of 4 webinars, and I don't know when we'll get the blog posted, but I put the hyperlinks in, so watch for that. But they're just helping you navigate this space of like, what am I going to do? What do I want to do? And how can I optimize whatever I choose to do? So stay tuned for that. But I posted the previous webinar in the chat. Okay. Recently found out my husband has had a 5-year gambling addiction, and there was a secret account with massive debt, stealing from my earnings and cutting his own paycheck in half this whole time. I'm devastated and unsure I can get over this amount of betrayal, even though he is taking positive steps forward. I actually like him more now because he is finally talking to me, and I feel like I have him back emotionally. How do you choose between your values, family versus honesty, partnership, and financial, I think, security?
I mean, hopefully with enough work, you don't have to choose between those things, because sometimes you can have family and honesty and a partner and regain financial security. I mean, going to statistics, 2 people working towards repaying and rebuilding a debt scenario usually is more productive if both people are actually working towards the same goal. It's a good sign that you feel like he's being honest now. But I'm so glad you brought up this kind of betrayal, this financial betrayal, because to me, it takes just as much accountability structure and specific expertise and professional help as any other process addiction. Gambling into this level of debt, I want to know what other addictions is he doing that you might not know about? What kind of structure is going to go into creating new rules and a system for him to unwire this really intense, unhealthy coping system that he's grown and developed and created a whole secret lifestyle behind your back. And we just really need to call in the troops, get in all that help for people who are experts in process addiction recovery, 12-step meetings, get you help and support as you ask these really big questions. You know, should I stay or should I go? Will I ever get over this betrayal? And see how he moves forward. I mean, these are all questions that are developing, but they're still in development, and you need to keep working.
And I'm with Kristin, and you can still, like, if you see he's making progress, great. Gamblers Anonymous is a 12-step for gambling specifically. Debtors Anonymous is a really good one too, because there's probably multiple aspects going on that could be helpful. But him just getting caught and going, oh, I feel bad, won't be enough. Like, that would be a very unsafe, massive red flag for you. So making sure that you have the support around that too. And watch what his actions are, not lips moving, addicts lying, minimizing, denial, all of that for ourselves as well. So what are his actions? This kind of ties into one of the questions that I was thinking about when you were talking, Kristin, is you talked about an addict learning, like, here's some signs of good things. And one of them is holding boundaries. And this kind of reminds me, I had someone that said, well, he's holding a boundary of, like, that, my program is my program. And, like, the rigid boundaries where it's still pushing a partner away. And so when you shared the healthy signs, you also shared if it's helpful for the partner. And I think things can get weaponized in recovery, well, I'm taking care of myself, these are my boundaries, this is what I need, versus, I'm sharing my boundaries with you and I want to discuss it, and I want to see if this navigates and helps the relationship. Because otherwise, if it's just like, you don't get to know about my recovery, that does not create the safety and connection for partners as well. So with this case, I'm, like, if there is true work towards restitution, and that, if there's massive debt, it could probably be a longer term one, but if if you are seeing positive signs that this person is working towards having a true recovery plan, has identified, the 3-circle plan, and Kristin, shares this in the Life Anonymous book too. It's not just for sex addicts, it's, any addiction